Yeah. So Bob, I've been here for a few weeks now.
Yep.
And I just want to know your infamous, the dynamic. What I've witnessed so far is the Muslims sort of gang up and circle the Christians and try to have a conversation and find a weak one that's not familiar with the script, as you call it, and throw the same Trinitarian, how does your God, who drink milk, all of the same script that they usually do, and run it with the Christian and get a clip for it for the YouTube. But Mohammed Hijab was just here and he's just run off from you. He doesn't want to debate you. So what have you done to be able to get them to be...
So there's a couple of things I want to say. Firstly, yes, I challenged Mohammed Hijab to a debate today, and Mohammed Hijab ran away from the debate and refused to debate. Their excuse is that I crossed some kind of line because I identify Mohammed as a paedophile because he had sex with a 9-year-old child and married a 6-year-old. Well, I think if the shoe fits, wear it, you know. But it's also because Muslims have debated me. Even when I used to say Mohammed was a paedophile, they debated me for years, and I was still saying it then, and they didn't decide to boycott me at that time. And I've beaten them in argument. And there's a lot of intelligent Christians who are coming down to the corner and beating the Muslims in argument. And I want to invite everyone who watches this, you know, come to Speaker's Corner and actually talk to the intelligent Christians, hear our side of the story. But I want to mention something about them, you know, surrounding Christians. There's a number of practices that they use here in the corner that are, in quote marks, cultic in the way that they attempt to manipulate people. So if you identify someone who's weak, doesn't respond, doesn't argue back, and then you surround them, what that person who's weak and influenceable, he feels the peer pressure, or she feels the peer pressure, that when you ask the question, should you take Shahada, they'll say yes, because they feel the peer pressure and they have this expectation that they need to make everyone happy around them. And this is a tactic that they're using to manipulate the weak-minded here in the park. Another tactic that they use is the yes, 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 yes sales technique. So they ask you a question, you say yes, they ask you another question, they say yes, they ask you another question, you say yes. They ask you a series of questions, yes, 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 in a row. And then when you've said yes 3 or 4 times, they again go, well, it's time you become a Muslim, do you want to take your Shahada? And because you've said yes 5 times before, you've already conditioned your mind to say yes again. And it's a simple manipulative tactic that is used by salesmen. Salesmen use that tactic to get you to say yes to buying something. Another manipulative tactic that they use is outright lies. They literally lie to people because they know only like 1 or 2% of people are actually going to bother to check what's being said, and that the vast majority of people will go, well, you said it, so it must be true. So they literally lie to people. Another manipulative tactic that they use is they get you to sit down on the ground, because by getting you to sit down on the ground, they're trying to make you feel disarmed so that it's not you versus them. And then what they do is they talk to you in a friendly way. And this is, again, making you lower your guard. Another manipulative tactic that they do is that they find people who are vulnerable, who have some emotional need, and then they try to fill it. I know at least 2 Muslims in this park who used to come to this park who became Muslim because they were promised a wife. They really wanted a wife and they were promised a wife. And they became Muslim because the Muslims said, if you become a Muslim, we'll find you a wife.
Yeah, one of the first Muslims that befriended here, his whole shtick is that to get people married, and pointing to the fact that Islam is the only way, or he claims that Islam is the only people that's fighting the anti-marriage crisis.
And yes, so if you're coming to the park and you're looking for a wife, then you're really vulnerable to that suggestion. Oh, we'll find you a wife. It's manipulation. And it's manipulation, the same kind of manipulation tactics are used by salesmen and they're used by cults.
Is it manipulation, or is it just them defending their faith the best way they know how?
Well, it's not entirely the case that everything that they do is manipulative. They are defending their faith as well. And it's not that one excludes the possibility of the other. The two things work together. And there are sincere Muslims down here trying to sincerely defend their faith and trying to give honest dawah, but they're not the majority.
What's the conversation with those people like, the ones that are sincerely trying?
Well, I mean, we usually make a point of pointing it out in our videos. So I just want to state for the record, Soko Films and me are not the same thing. I've got my own channel, it's called Bob of Speaker's Corner. I'm not funded or supported by Soko Films, but if you look on Soko Films, in our videos, whenever we meet a Muslim who's sincere, we always point it out. And what you tend to find is the conversation is non-confrontational, non-argumentative in the sense of vitriol. There's no ad hominem attacks. It's a civil debate and a discussion, and the person listens as much as they speak.
Is there something that Christians can do to get that bit of conversation out of more Muslims here? Or you think
Yeah, well, you need to identify the people that are playing the game, and then stop talking to them.
So there are people here who are specifically here to play the game.
Yeah, there are people here, and they're the regular Dawagandists here. I could name them, but I don't want to give them. I don't want to give them free advertising.
Don't need to name them.
Yeah, Christians need to get more savvy about not giving free advertising, about not helping Muslims produce propaganda videos.
What games should Christians be playing?
Well, we need to play the chess that's being played with us, which means that you don't go to the main Islamic channels and appear on those channels debating with Muslims without a Christian camera there, right? What we need in the corner are more Christians who are willing to film. What we need in the corner are more Christians who are emotionally stable because they come from good families, they've got good jobs, preferably married with children, and who know how to physically defend themselves.
Why is marriage important? What do you think?
It's because it's one of the things that helps with emotional security. We have too many. It's not a case that I'm saying if you're single, don't come. I'm saying if you're single and you're really craving a partner, don't come. If you're lonely and really craving fellowship, don't come, because you're emotionally vulnerable. What we need are Christians who are secure emotionally, mentally because they've studied apologetics, and physically because they know how to stand up for themselves.
How important is it to have studied apologetics before getting involved in debates?
It is really important to have studied apologetics before you get involved in debates, but getting involved in debates helps you to learn apologetics. So it's not that you must do one before you do the other, but if you come in and you're a novice and you're new and you haven't really studied, at least be willing to frame yourself properly and say, look, I'm still studying, I haven't learned everything, I'm still on my way.
And just final question, I know you've got to go soon.
No, ask as many as you like.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've got loads more. But
Go for it.
let me know when I'm talking to you.
Yeah, no, sorry.
So far, I have spoken to some Muslims that, like you said, are a little bit more generous and aren't really to play the game, and some that are also on the exploration journey, and they seem to have found Islam to be a place that's comfortable at the moment, but I'm not convinced another day that that's where they're going to make it their own. How do Christians best engage those types of Muslims who aren't playing the games but are also still Muslims that are trying to defend their faith?
So if we're meeting someone who's a sincere Muslim, right, then my advice to you is if you can, if possible, take them away from the crowd. Take them away from the circle of Muslims who will then disrupt the conversation. Because there are professional Muslim hecklers here, right? Christians are completely outnumbered in this park. And so even when you get a good conversation coming, if you're getting the upper hand in that conversation, eventually some Muslim will come and interrupt it. So if you can, try to get that Muslim to the side so that you can have an honest conversation with them, or try to get them on board with the idea that to stick with the conversation even if other people are interrupting, and then have a conversation with them, and then give them something to take away and read, and then invite them to continue the dialogue outside of the park and continue to meet them. There are Muslims I know who've become Christian from within this park. I was having breakfast with a former Muslim who used to come to this park as a Muslim. He's now a Christian. He came with me to church today, and we celebrated Mass together, and he joined me for breakfast afterwards. And I knew he was an ex-Muslim, and he became a Christian, and he used to be a Muslim in this park. And he's not the only one, and there are other Muslims becoming Christians through the videos. And my advice, the reason why we need videos is because in this park it's very hard to establish a rapport that doesn't get interrupted. But there are lots of Muslims sincerely watching these videos, and they're doing it in the privacy of their own home. their own bedroom, and they're listening to the arguments, and they're thinking for themselves sincerely, and many of them are becoming Christian.
Last month, I've been here for about 5 weeks, and 2-3 weeks ago, I did something called an estuary. It's a conversation protocol that helps to facilitate better conversation that's away from debate. It's something that there was a Jew that was there, a Muslim, and clerical is also infamous in this part, a secular Quranist, and it was less confrontational than this, but it did afford people to say what they believe without there being jumped on straight away. Do you think that's something that's this park needs, or is that something that you think will push over the message to
I would love it. I would love it if, as an entire collection of people that come to this park, we could all agree on one set of rules about how to conduct debate in this park. And actually, I want to put out an invite to every Muslim, atheist and Jew who comes regularly into the park, that we establish normal decorums of debate in this park that we can all agree to and that we can follow. A minimum standard. A minimum standard including agreeing to timing it, agreeing upon the time, and allowing the other person to speak, and going backwards and forwards in conversation like that. Because sadly, what I find a lot of the time is that you get a good conversation going and then it gets disrupted by a heckler, to do a talk soon, bro. It gets disrupted by a heckler and the whole conversation breaks down, or someone loses decorum and the whole conversation breaks down. An example of that would be Abdul Sheikh, who came to the park a couple of weeks ago. He tried to enter into a debate with me. He quickly found that he was out of his depth. Then when the debate got too much for him, he started shouting, so I started shouting. Then he got a bit argy-bargy, so I pushed back. And then him and his thugs assaulted 15 or 20 Muslims assaulted 3 Christians in the park. And we can avoid that if Muslims particularly could practice decorums around debate, including not heckling. I know that is permitted in the park, and I know it's normal in the park, but I don't think it helps with intelligent debate.
One of the things that's obvious here, if anyone comes out, is that there is there is a disparity in the numbers of Christians and Muslims that are here. But I think, as a Christian, I think that works to the benefit of the Christian. That's almost a testimony to the gospel, and to the fact that even the small amount of Christians that are here are having an effect to such that we've got famous Muslims that not want to debate the small majority of Christians and find sort of the new Christians in the park to get I've been the new Christian. My first week here, I think I was with Damsel, and I just got circled. I was like, oh, there's the camera. And knowing the shtick, I sort of laughed it off and wasn't willing to get into a debate because I knew I wasn't prepared. And I didn't want to. That's not my style.
And I think you acted with wisdom. I think one of the great faults of Christians who come to the park is a lot of them don't know where their ignorance begins. They don't know where the limits of their own knowledge are. And that's because amongst Christians in our churchianity, a lot of our churchianity, we've lost the idea of humbleness. We've lost the idea of respecting scholars. And we've lost the idea of knowing the limits of our own knowledge and not speaking beyond it. And I think we need to recover that. But that shouldn't discourage people from coming to the park to do evangelism. It just means that you should frame yourself correctly and not speak beyond the limits of your knowledge. And I think that actually, I disagree with you. I think that the fact that we're outnumbered here means that it's hard to do effective evangelism here in the park. The fact that Christians don't stick to, we are outnumbered means we're too spread out, and so we can't back one another up. And so it appears lots of times, because most of the crowd are Muslim, to non-biased spectators that Christians are losing because the Muslims are always going, yeah, he's telling a lie, this is rubbish, And but I would rather have good quality Christians come down to the park to do evangelism, and I've tried to describe what that looks like, than just any Christian come down to the park. Because a lot of Christians just aren't equipped to do this right, temperamentally, psychologically, in their heart. The Bible again and again and again talks about standing firm in the faith, being firm in the faith, being rooted in the faith, being strong in the faith. And we're not teaching Christians how to be strong in the faith. I'll give you an example. A Christian said to me today, Oh, well, imagine if someone said to me imagine if someone managed to disprove the Trinity to me. Well, the thing is, if you are standing firm in the faith, then that hypothetical situation doesn't exist. What can only exist is this. Someone presents an argument that you don't have an answer to, and rather than think to yourself, maybe the Trinity's not true, you think to yourself, oh, I don't know enough about the Trinity to answer this question. You see, the difference between being firm in the faith and not being firm in the faith is the one who is firm in the faith does not entertain the idea that the Christian faith is wrong. He entertains the idea that he doesn't know enough to defend it.
How important, in this context, apologetics is clearly very important to evangelism. But outside of the part, how important is apologetics to evangelism to non-Muslims and Muslims?
It's really important. Because culture, the wider culture is making statements about the Christian faith. And there is this narrative that's criticizing Christianity, all different kinds of levels and ways. As Christians, we need to compete for every part of the narrative about our faith. We need to compete about the narrative about the history of our faith. We need to compete about the narrative about the values of our faith. We need to compete for the narrative about the doctrines of our faith, about the ethics of our faith. Too many Christians, they narrow everything that they say to just about the basic message of the gospel. But that isn't good evangelism. Good evangelism is engaging with every argument and every stronghold, whatever it is, that sets itself up against the rule of Christ. And that's why we give an answer for the hope that we have. But that means we have to be willing to engage in every argument, whether it's gospel related or not, whether it's doctrinal or not, so that in every way we can present the gospel as firmly founded and firmly applied as an alternative way of life to liberalism, progressive thought.
That's a lot. You've been very generous. I know you've got to talk. I've got more than enough. And
I also think Joseph wants to have a debate. Yeah, we can have a conversation. All right, lovely. God bless you, bro. Peace be with you.
Thank you very much.
Have you got my card?
I do not.
Here is my card. There you go, bro. God bless you.
Much, bro.
There's an apologetics app there that'll help you.
Thank you.